What is the prime difference between Bhairav Baba and Batuk Bhairav?
Vatuka Bhairava is Shiva himself. He is Shiva. Literally, he is Shiva who has taken the form of a small child and come down because to aid the upasakas of the Shakti Mata who are worshippers of Shakti, so that there are, when you go into the Shakti Upasana, there are many entities that can come and try to take away your energy, not just human beings. So these entities, they will try to disrupt your sadhana by influencing the minds of people around you or this or that, etc. It is a natural course. So we read stories now, like somebody is doing tapasya and then Indra sends some distraction and things like that. So these things happen in sadhana, literally. Okay, many problems can come. Even you may be sitting quietly and doing intense, little bit of mantra japa is okay. I'm saying very intense. So you are aiming that, okay, I want to become a siddha or something like that. Okay, so there are many this type of entities that will come. Vatuka is the one deity. Shiva, out of his kindness, he takes the form of a small child who has all the powers of the 64 Bhairavas inside him. He says that if you worship, instead of worshipping all this, calming down all these entities, you worship Vatuka, I will calm all these things down. तुम्हारा road पूरा clear रहेगा. Vatuk Bhairava, there is nothing that he cannot do. His mantra is a Ramvan of this age. Anything and everything he can get done. But there is only one catch. He's a child. So you have to have emotional connection with him. You cannot mechanically only do. You have to love Vatuka like a child. If you love him, if he's happy, he can change your destiny. And I'd say this, and I've said this, deities who are adults, like fully grown, or when we imagine the iconography as a fully grown man or a woman, they will give you what is there in your destiny, and how much ever sadhana you do, proportionately some results will give you. Vatuka is a child. If he loves you, pura Brahman घुमा देगा तुम्हारे लिए. ठीक है. At the same time, he's a child. So if you ask something from Vatuka and he gives you, and next day you forget him, then he will bring hell to you.
Yeah. I'm enjoying the other sadhana.
Vatuka is I would say, is the best deities of this era. I'm not saying Kal Bhairava. Kal Bhairava is tough. Okay, it's for the certain makeup is required. I love Baba Kal Bhairav very much. But Vatuk Bhairav, I've done a lot of sadhana Vatuk Bhairav myself. And in the most complex and difficult of situations, abhi aajkal to nahi karta hu. Yeah, I remember once somebody very close to me, and this is before all these things, before I became known and others to our people. Somebody close to me was suffering from some very complicated health issue. Doctors were like, admit karna hai, or don't even know what's going to happen. It's kind of serious matter. And I had no clue. I remember at night I sat to do Vatuka, certain mantras and prayogas of Vatuka. It's 3 hours I did japa with certain bhogs and certain offerings and things. And I told him that I want this fixed. I don't care. You please help me. Next day morning, there is this miraculous thing. And I woke up a little late at 10:30 because I was awake all night doing this, late night till. And suddenly this doctors and all, they say that this miraculous thing, that particular problem for which they had identified, it just vanished. And the doctor can't believe it. So he takes the person to another hospital, another instrument. Ki ye kaise ho gaya? Ye kaise ho gaya? And I remember that is the first time. And I'm like, how is this possible? And then I remember, oh my God, it is him who had died. And the person never ever had that problem again in life. It was his blessing that saved that person that day. And I've seen he can do these things, but you have to remember that you never take him for granted. He's a child. You take a child for granted. If you have interacted with a small child, you will know that. Okay.
Yeah. It's through your Leela understanding. He listens very fast, Dada.
He's very fast.
He's
the swiftest of all forms today existent in the Hindu consciousness. When Vatuka is the fastest. In fact, Vatuka is almost in some older manuscripts. It is believed that Vatuka was like Skandha. Okay.
Oh, very
Till 9th century, there are some texts or manuscripts somebody had sent me in Nepal area where Vatuka Bhairava was considered equivalent of Skandha. Skandha in the Vedic Sampradaya Paddhati is same as Vatuka in the Tantric Paddhati, like a child of Shiva or Shiva himself. In fact, Vatuka Bhairava, if you do a formal upasana of Vatuka, the Nyasa of Vatuka is the Pancha Brahma mantras of Shiva. There are 5 mantras of Shiva, core mantras. Those have to be used in Nyasa Vatuka Bhairava, which means before you do, what is Nyasa? You are placing the deity. In Sharir
yeah.
So which deity are you placing? You are placing Shiva. Because Vatuka is Shiva. His heart is Shiva only. He is Shiva. Out of his kindness, who has come down in the form of a child. Why? So that if it's in a fully adult form, then adult form puja is little difficult. Requires a lot of discipline. We are entering deeper into Kali Yuga. Discipline, concentration, ये सब चला जाएगा. Abhi, at least if you have shuddhata of feelings, of emotions, a little bit of mantra and a little bit of purity and bhava, there is at least somebody who will respond to you. ठीक है? That is where Vatuka comes in. There is nothing he cannot do. If he is happy, there's nothing. In fact, last year we were able to, it's Vatuka's blessing that me and my group of people whom I guide, we were able to contribute and offer a mukuta and a trishula to Baba in Kashi, Vatuka Bhairava. It's beautiful.
And even Kali takes time at times, I think. But Batuka's Dada, that experience and that knowledge is
Yes.
very.
And by the way, Vatuka, there is another blessing on a practical side. If Vatuka blesses you, your worship of Mahavidyas become easy. He has the key to the Mahavidyas. He knows he's a Bhairava Sarupa. Bhairava Sarupa means he can go into the cremation ground also, if needed. He will be in the house. If needed, he can take the form of a cremation ground deity also. Otherwise, he will take a very Somya house form of deity also. No issues with that. Vatuka Bhairava. He has every single power in his consciousness that you can imagine, that you cannot imagine also. It's there. Absolutely, he is the Brahman in the form of a small child who has come. And he can teach you, nobody can teach you Kali Upasana, nobody can teach you how to reach Tripur Sundari, nobody can teach you Taravasa better than Vatuka Bhairava.
But Dada, it's a fact. My personal understanding is in Kali Sadhana, when Bhatuk Bhairav has come, things have changed. Big something, you know it the best. Something has changed and I'm loving it. It is just opening up.
Yes.
Very smoothly.
In order to explain this also, there is a colloquial saying that when Mahakali was very furious and nobody could stop her, because once she's like this, she's that, that car, वो जाते जाते fifth gear पहुंच गया तो फिर और कोई रोक नहीं पाएगा उनको. She's unstoppable force of the universe, can destroy anything and everything. Only then Shiva takes the form of a child, and then there is that motherliness that comes out of her, and she stops the destruction. This moral of the story, what we are talking about, is that Vatuka teaches you that with the bhava, when you connect to Kali, that you cannot. Kali is beyond rituals. Let me be very clear. All the mantras of Mahakali are fantastic. After a point, all you have to do is put your head down in Sharanagati. Bas, because nobody can control her. Nobody can control her. Nobody. It is impossible.
I thought we're doing like a Kalima episode and then we'll cover all the angles of...
But here, sorry to...
Go on.
Sorry to...
No, please go for it.
Because Kalima and Bhairav Baba are very strongly linked. So when you are worshipping Mahakali as a Mahavidya, okay, so her consort is Mahakal Bhairav. What that means is that without the blessings of Bhairava, you will never understand Kali fully. It is impossible. I mean, you can have कि I worship Mahakali and I have bhakti and वो सब ठीक है अपने जगह पे, that's fine. But the reason why the Bhairavas are given is that you must imbibe the tattva of that Bhairava to understand. Dakshina Kali is one form of Kali. It's a very fierce form. In the ancient times also there is an iconography, a very, very powerful iconography. See if you can find it. It's next one, yes.
That is it.
That is a modern painting by somebody.
Damn.
Shankar Sreshta is the painter. I think the name is written there. So this is a modern painting of Kali, Dakshina Kali. A very ancient dhyana of Mahakali. As per the dhyana it is made. So here, you will notice very interestingly at the base, there are 4 figures. Those 4 are Ishwaras. We worship Ishwara, right? As the all-potent, and these are Ishwara Dattas. Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara, Ishwara. All 4. Brahma, Vishnu, Rudra and Ishwara. 4 of them are there. They hold the whole structure together.
Brahma, Vishnu,
Rudra. All the 3 Trimurtis. And the 4th one is Ishvara, it's called. Basically, Ishvara is a tattva. The level of Ishvara. Whatever you conceive as an Ishvara is somebody who's very high, right? A god in our...
All-encompassing.
Right.
Okay.
So in the Shakta conception, there are 36 tattvas. In these, they say that Ishvara is also a tattva. Very high category, but it is a category. And that can be, so Brahma is also a Ishvara, Rudra is also Ishvara, Vishnu is also an Ishvara, and there is a generic Ishvara also there. 4 of them. On top of that, there is Sadashiva. Okay. Which is like our Lord Shiva, Sadashiva. On top of that is Mahakal Bhairav, blue in color,
Damn.
dark. On top of that is Dakshina Kali. And this is form of Kali is so powerful and ferocious. She's called Dakshina because Dakshina is the southern direction. Yama and death comes from that direction. Yama gets scared looking at her. Death gets scared seeing this and runs away.
Can you zoom in?
In fact, there are more iconographic details, secrets in this. Everything in this has a meaning. It is not randomly designed by anybody. It's this painting actually is quite more or less accurate as per the dhyana of Dakshina Kali.
How come at this point in human history does Dakshina Kali even want to be revealed to the world in a commercial mainstream podcast like this?
I have no idea. Wait, it's already it's already there on the internet, so that's why I could show you.
No one would Google Dakshina Kali
Yeah.
themselves unless they know about it.
So I don't know, but what I feel is there has been, which I had mentioned once during when we were discussing Tantra in the other podcasts. So what has happened is in the last 30, 40 years, because of the internet and the easy access to information, very esoteric ideas of Tantra are already out in the public. Okay, so what, not only out in the public, but there are people sitting in various universities across the world, they're doing research and all that. Some once in a while, if I read those papers, I like the fact that they bring out old and rare manuscripts, translate them. I don't agree with their conclusions though. I find there is a strong Western bias in whatever they look at. Western bias. So there is an Indian way of looking at it. There's an Upasaka's way of looking at it. So they're not looking at the Upasaka's way. So their rendition of the slokas and everything is correct. The final conclusion is incorrect.
For example?
Some text I was reading on Tantra by some Western scholar. Leave the name aside. Let's just say Western scholar. So he had very well written essay, very, very robust with lot of examples and slokas and this and that. And then he keeps a line, enters that. So Tantra was more like a kind of a revolutionary path that was against the mainstream Brahminism, and it wanted to kind of, strike back at the Brahminical ideas, things like that. I disagree with this conclusion. So it is true that the mainstream, first of all, the term Brahminism is highly politically loaded. Let's avoid that. Let's say mainstream Sanatan Dharma, Vedic religion. The Vedic religions, Paddhatis and Tantra Paddhatis are different. I agree to that. Kaula Tantras are definitely different. Then there is not just different, it's like either you're here or you're there. If you try to walk both the paths, eventually you'll fall at one point, or you will never progress. Your mind has to be schizophrenic eventually. Because these, to give an example, in the Kaula Paddhati, we use ritually sanctified alcohol. But in the mainstream Vedic religion, alcohol is strictly banned. If you take even a drop, you have to do prayaschitta. That's as strict as that. Meat is still okay. Fish is still okay. But alcohol, no. Nobody. And the higher the Varna, which is a Brahmin taking alcohol, is even greater sin. They're very clear about it. So whereas Tantra, if you go to the Kolo mark, you not only have to offer it to the deities, okay, with mantras and all that specifically, not just randomly. But even then, it did not start as a revolt and a revolution or as a social work project or some kind of a social revolution. No. Why? That is because they're saying when you're doing the mantra sadhana, say of Ma Kali, you're doing sadhana, you're doing japa, etc., etc. At the end of the day, at the last step, you'll have to do Brahmin Bhojan, which means you have to feed Brahmins. So if they're against Brahmins or if they're against somebody, why would they tell you to feed Brahmins at the end? The reason is Tantra did not start as some kind of social work. That is the bias that people carry sometimes, many scholars from the West. So because of what, everybody has their own biases, by the way. It's human to have biases. You've grown up in an environment, it'll always be there. Which makes me slightly skeptical, not fully, but slightly skeptical of anybody who has taken to Hinduism after the age of 18. Because there are certain inherent biases that will be there. It's not that easy to remove all those things. It will always pop up here or there or somewhere. it's human and it's natural. There is a fierceness in her, and Bhairav Upasana helps to prepare one for all the Mahavidyas. He is the guardian of the door after which the Mahavidyas start. And the more intense of the Mahavidyas, there is the, in the Kali Kula, for example, Kali Kula Mahavidyas would be Kali, Tara, Chinnamasta. These are Kali Kula Mahavidyas, more or less. They're very intense. Their mantra sadhana is like, it's like hammering. Okay. In order to be able to safely digest the effect of the mantras, you will need some blessings of Bhairava. He creates the mind and the body, the steadiness, that detachment that you talk about, that becomes very heavy. Then you can digest whatever, then you enjoy the play, not only digest. Then see, the idea is you have to enjoy the whole sadhana. At the end, somewhere, there must be something about it that you like. Otherwise, why will you ever enter this path? So that in order to like this, it's like going in this, super fast supersonic jet. If you're a fighter pilot and accustomed to it, perhaps you like it. For an average individual who has never flown, for him, put him into a fighter jet, he'll be gone. He'll feel scared. So in order that your mind and body can handle it, that is where Bhairava Upasana comes into real help. He is the base.
Specifically, now let's come to Bhairava Upasana. One of the things that happens is, as you go deeper into the sadhana, your very interestingly, when you go deeper into the sadhana, you will see that your this 5 indriyas will become sharper. That's one of the very typical experiences that happen to people. Sharper means your sense of smell, your sense of hearing, etc. will start getting sharper, which means your consciousness will become very subtle. So you can suddenly hear things, or sometimes, very subtle sounds. And that is the time when, because most of you would not be having a physical guru, it is very important to have an axis in meditation. But also check that is the meditation actually going deeper. If it is going deeper along with it, then you are on the right track. Then this is definitely a very positive experience and will take you to higher states of sadhana. Eventually, as the experiences go deeper, for example, as we were discussing, you will realize the iconography of the deity holds the key to the experiences that an upasaka will have. And that's a very, very deep idea, because these iconographies were not randomly selected. So, Bhairav Baba, he holds the khappar in his hand. As you keep doing sadhana year after, and don't expect this to happen in one day, and this is not a matter of imagination also. So don't start imagining this. This comes as a realization at a certain stage, after years. Don't be in a hurry. Consistency, discipline, patience, 3 things. Whoever has that, genuinely has that, is going to succeed. Whoever does not have any of the 3 parameters will fall off the track one day or the other. As one goes deeper into Bhairava Upasana, you will realize that the khappar that he actually holds is your skull. It's not anything else. It's you, your head he is holding in his hand. And when he actually, we hear that story when Bhairava actually decapitated Brahma, that will relate to your life. He is going to decapitate the mind that runs around here and there, that thinks that it has created its own universe. So this is me, this is my family, this is my office, this is my spouse, this is my children, this is my clothes, this is my identity. I go on the road, somebody says this, I feel happy, somebody says that, I feel sad. That is the Brahma that you have created in your own head. One day Bhairava comes, decapitates that Brahma. With that skull he puts it. Your mind that runs around will stop. Absolutely stop. And when the mind stops, it's like this, imagine this lake, beautiful, powerful lake. And this is a metaphor that has been used many times in spirituality by many great acharyas and siddhas. I'm just copying from them, but this is the best example that I found. So there's this lake which is very disturbed. It's constant water ripples everywhere. You can't make out anything. That's the mind. The moment Bhairava cuts off the mind, everything becomes still. And the moment it becomes still, there's nothing you can see, as if the water does not exist. Deep inside the pond, then you see something else exists which does not change easily. That is then the start of genuine spiritual progress. That is the anubhuti that one seeks eventually. And that is the only experience among thousands of experiences that can change any average human being into an absolutely divine condition. That one experience is why masters like Buddha would sit for 50 days in meditation, or whoever it is, etc. That point, and that Bhairava gives the day he decides that he's going to show you that it is your skull, your mind that he holds. He grips you. It is not your buddhi that is running yourself. Once that comes, then you realize that state, the term that is used in the Bhagavad Gita, nimitta matra. And it is not a statement of, false humility. False humility is far worse than being actually officially arrogant, if you ask me. But it is not a matter of false humility. You actually realize that what is nimitta matra. You have done nothing about it. Everything is controlled by a higher force. It is getting things done. If it succeeds, good. If it does not succeed, that is also good. Neither was it your responsibility when it succeeded, so you don't deserve the praise. Neither is it your responsibility if it failed. But what you did was that what you have to do is that you do it with the greatest possible dedication, and that brings about a terrific joy inside that opens up. Once you disassociate your mind from getting attached to the things that you're doing, that itself is a sadhana. Nature suddenly opens up things that you could not imagine were possible. Long, vast distances. It's vistas of things you normally can never imagine will be shown to you. But only condition is that you stop attaching yourself to what you're doing. That itself is the state which comes as one keeps doing Bhairava sadhana eventually. So that is the kind of anubhutis that people, those who succeed, and many will, because obviously it is somewhere the will of Bhairava that so many are suddenly chanting this mantra of his. It's very simple Nama mantra, nothing complicated. And the idea was that Bhairava sadhana has many aspects. There are hardcore sadhanas that happen in cremation grounds. No one is asking you to do that. Simple one that you can sit at home and do, and relate to eventually the tattva of Para Bhairava. Para Bhairava is the one consciousness that has both Shiva Tattva and Shakti Tattva inside, which is in the 36 Tattva scheme, which is the highest. Everything is inside him. Everything. Positive, negative, everything. It is a form of Advaitam, but it is not the Vedantic Advaitam. It is the Devata Advaitam. It is, you might call it the Shaiva Advaitam, where everything is Shiva, where everything is Bhairava. So that state, that Tattva, can eventually come, and I believe will come to many people, because there are so many doing this sadhanas. So I hope that you have a gist, because this is a very difficult and complicated topic. You get a gist of the idea of what Devata Anubhuti, or what is the right type of Anubhuti that you should look forward to as an Upasaka, that is going to help you grow and help you go ahead and help you transform into whatever it is that you are meant to transform into. Jai Bhairav Baba. So the first thing is that first effect of the Bhairavattattva that comes to any individual who does japa of this mantra is that it brings a sense of steadiness and fearlessness. So in Tantra or any upasana paddhati, two important aspects to any sadhana or an upasaka. The first thing is the adhara shakti. Adhara is your mind and body. So basically, do you have the capacity to take the shakti of the deities? That's very simple. First, basic question. So unless your mind and body has the capacity, you simply can't take it. Even if a deity were to genuinely appear in their own full force and power and try to transform you, it is most likely to cause a nervous breakdown in the upasaka unless the adhara is very strong. And that is the difference between coming to that what I was talking. There are hundreds of people who see various deities and yet nothing happens. That is because the deity doesn't come in their full swarupa. Some of it is mental projection, some of it is a very purva janmas thing and all that. But the real transformative effect of a deity comes when he or she comes in his actual power and strength and glory. Then you transform. Either you will transform or you will be shocked like you have never been shocked. Very bluntly putting it. I had this experience once, long back, years ago, when I first did my 40-day an Anushtan of Bhairav Baba. Very simply, I had no idea what an Anushtan is, just like that I did it. Right after a complete few days, I had an experience, and that was, for lack of better words, that was sort of scary. So, but then there was this, this thing in the head that says that, no, let's try once again and see. So that's how eventually today I'm here, so from that experience. But the point is that first experience, if your mind is at the Adhara is not steady, it causes a disbalance. Bhairava's first thing that he does is that to steady the mind and body of the Upasaka. This will reflect in, if you carry on for anybody carries on for some time, it will bring about, how do you put it, a strength, an inner strength, a lack of fear. Lack of fear has to be qualified here. There are many deities in our system of upasana paddhatis who give protection. For example, Hanumanji is very famous for giving protection. Ma Durga will give you protection. Kali will give you protection. Lord Narasimha will give you protection. But there's a difference in the way Bhairava gives you protection. He gives you protection by actually throwing you into the fire, so that the thing that you are scared of, you're not scared of anymore. Once you get into it and you see what exactly this is, so it suddenly steadies you. That is his method. Other deities will stop the problem right at the beginning, but that's what it is. You will not necessarily change. That is why you will change in a different sense. I will not go into that aspect. It will divert the conversation. But basically, Bhairava creates that sense of strength, first of all, and number two, that steadiness in the mind. And at a surrounding or environmental level, the amount of japa as it increases, I believe that the japa should ideally, for a country like India, when I started off, when somebody had asked me, I said that we should have 8 crores japa every Ashtami. 8 crores. Because the volume of japa should be consummate to the volume of the number of people who stay in this land. So everything is proportionate. Whole world works on proportions. So sometimes I see that, somebody taking a sankalpa just like that. Say I decide that I want to take a sankalpa for saving the world. Very ambitious project. Do I have the capacity for it? Do I even know how many people are there in the world? So there, if you have to have a realistic idea, say India has this amount of population at this time, around 8 crore japa of Bhairava, if it happens on Ashtami Tithis, and I believe by Baba's will it will come eventually, as it has reached 1 crore in 1 year actually, with very less effort, and then this continues for a year or more, this is going to cause an upsurge not only of people getting more attracted to sadhana, but also a lot of dharmic changes automatically will happen. Cleansing will happen in this land. Very strangely, the mantras are always linked internally and externally. So whenever you chant the Bhairava mantras and all that, it is going to cause an effect in the environment around. It will cleanse things, start cleansing, which is perhaps a thing we really need in this land. So that is the first impact, and the larger impact is that there will be an upsurge in Shakti Upasana. Bhairava Upasana is never without Shakti Upasana, or he will bring it, the right form, the right content, in his own time. That's how I see it. Firstly, so I personally believe that there is no way that sadhana can bring about a disaster in an individual. If it does, then the disaster ऐसे ही होने वाला था. Sadhana is just फालतू का blame दिया जा रहा है. But so my point is that if you are doing general Shakti Upasana is a more complicated topic in my opinion. Bhairav Baba it's kind of easier to connect to Bhairava. It's my experience. If you do the Nama Japa of Bhairav Baba over time, it creates, as I mentioned, that you will have certain kinds of strength, inner strength and a fearlessness comes into the Upasaka. Once it comes, then it steadies your path. You feel gladdened about it. But eventually, if somebody is doing Bhairav Upasana, somewhere or the other Shakti Upasana will make its entrance. There is no doubt about it. Among the Shakti Upasanas that connect to Bhairava, it's also important to understand that when a lot of people will be worshipping, say whether you do Batuka Bhairava Upasana or Kala Bhairava Upasana, these are the primary two forms. Not going to the Ashta Bhairava or there are 64 Bhairavas also for the divisions. So these two forms, Bhairava Upasana automatically, specifically for Vatuk Bhairava for example, let's see that Vatuka is one form of Bhairava who sort of literally holds the keys to the inner sanctums of Lalita Mahatripura Sundari. Without his blessing and without the blessing of Mahaganapati, you will know all the mantras and processes, but you will not have the experience. He knows how to navigate that path and reach to a stage where there is a direct anubhuti of Lalita Tripura Sundari, and that's very, very subtle, very, very complicated also, because it's very subtle. Same way, for Kala Bhairava, if you keep worshipping Kala Bhairava, his natural affinity of Kala Bhairava is to take a person towards the worship of Kali, Ma Kali or Ma Durga. Natural affinity. And in some cases it could be variations of these two primary Shaktis. Now, balancing, I believe, there is no harm in worshipping a little bit of, as if you have spent few years doing Bhairav Upasana. So what happens is that if you have to worship another deity, there is a minimum count of the Bhairava Japa that will still continue. Along with that, you can do Shakti Upasana as per your, your tendencies or as per directions of your Guru. Or if you are not aware of what to do, then the best option, in my opinion, is to do the 32 names of Ma Durga, which is something that is from the Shastras, it is kept open for anybody to do. It's you don't need a special permission for anybody to do that. Or even the Kamakhya Stotra, that is very beautiful if you keep doing that. So they bring certain amount of blessings, anugraha of the Devata into your life, and these are complementary, by the way. It is perfectly alright to have a greater affinity for one of the two. It's no harm in that. It's absolutely alright, and there is it doesn't work in the sense that the deities suffer from a sense of conflict. Any conflict is only in our own minds. It's not there. Each of them are complementary to the other. If somebody does a little bit of Bhairav Upasana, or maybe more of Bhairav Upasana and less of Devi Upasana, there is no harm in that. In fact, they gel together and they produce in certain, for example, certain paddhatis are there where, say, Durga Saptashati chanting is done, the Parayana of Durga Saptashati is done along with the mantras and Ashtottara Vatuk Bhairava. And it works with terrific speed. Terrific. I mean, triple the amount of speed. But mind you, I'm just saying it as an example. I do not mean that you start doing this from tomorrow. If you do it at your own risk. Because there are, Durga Saptashati is an amazing text. Very, very powerful and very beautiful. There's no doubt. But also it requires certain, best to take some guidance from somebody before you plunge into it. Same way, Bhairava Sadhana can accelerate any of the Mahavidya sadhanas. And that includes even the obscure or the rare Mahavidyas, like say Chinnamasta or Ma Baglamukhi. All that sadhanas will enhance very quickly for an Upasaka if he does Bhairava Sadhana. However, to do a Mahavidya sadhana, you will need some guidance or even Diksha. That is there. So Devi Upasana is more complicated. In my view, Shiva Upasana is slightly easier. Slightly. I'm not saying at the highest level, but at least in the initial stages. Even Bhairava Upasana is much easier for most people to do than complicated levels of Devi Upasana. Devi Upasana is not... So Shiva is like a transcendental consciousness. So you step out of everything and you focus on one. Whereas Devi Upasana, what it does to your mind is that it expands your mind horizontally. So as, for example, in Tantra Sadhana, as you go into higher Dikshas, Krama Diksha and all, and go into higher Dikshas, so your volume of beings that you will have to worship will increase. It is not only Devi. Each time you sit for Devi Upasana, first you have to give some bhog to Vatuka, to Ganpati, to Yoginis, this, that, etc. There will be Matrikas. There are complicated pujas where 8 to 9 patras have to be set for. So Devi is not alone, never alone. She is not going to come alone, she will come with full regiment. And you have to know how to appease them also at the higher levels. But simple way Devi Upasana is, as I mentioned, you can do the Ma Durga Stutis, especially the 32 names of Ma Durga, very beautiful, very effective. You can do the Kamakhya Stotram or even the Adya Stotra of Ma Kali. These are absolutely safe to do, by the way. And that balance between how much to do which, either somebody guides you or you yourself develop a balance. Each of them are complementary. You will see that when one person does Devi Upasana and little bit of Bhairav Upasana is added into it, it increases the pace of Devi Upasana very fast. Same way, if somebody likes Bhairav Upasana, you will never be only into Bhairava. Bhairava will take you, definitely will take you into some or the other form of Devi Sadhana. It is the way these things work. They are not very separate. Yes, definitely. There is absolutely no doubt about that. There is a certain degree of karmic debt with the devatas that are there, and a very competent analysis of the grahas at birth can also give you an indication that who is suitable for Bhairav Upasana, who will go how far in Bhairav Upasana, like that. So these things, anything that, whatever the grahas indicate are only things which are repercussions of activities that were performed in past, Purva Janma. So and that could be positive or negative, does not matter. So same way, some Devata karma has been done in the past that causes one to be born with certain kind of configurations that make an individual, take to Bhairav Upasana easier than others. That's one thing. And the other is, sometimes a Devata may suddenly decide to become more active in the earth plane. And when that happens, then regardless of the horoscope, lot of people will start seeing some of the other, not fully, but at least a proportional amount of effect and impact of Bhairav sadhana in their lives, and automatically that is going to pull them together. And that is precisely how this Bhairava Namajapa is spreading actually, because he is very active in this plane at this time. And that is why even anybody who starts with the simple Namajapa of Bhairava gets hooked onto it, and on their own they keep doing it for months and years. I mean, if it was for 5 days, 10 days, 11 days, I could understand. If you carry on for 6 months to 1 year, then definitely there is some contact you are making. Something is happening inside. That is why, the Upasaka carries on the japa. So Bhairav definitely comes both in Shiva and Shakti Upasana also. Shakti Upasana also without Bhairav is very tough to do. One can do, but succeeding is very tough. In fact, the greatest of Shaktas, the Siddha Mahapurusha of the Shakta Sampradaya, the list of the Siddhas, if you read their biography properly, you'll see these are all Bhairav Sarup. These are all filled with Bhairavtattva. They were born with Bhairavtattva. That is why they became the Siddha in the Shakta path. Without having the Bhairavtattva inside, and one of the best things about the Bhairavtattva is that, the ability to carry on regardless of the obstacles. It is not that you will succeed all the time. It is not that you will not feel fear. So he makes you fearless, but nobody is going to be 100% fearless. Then you will not be alive in this plane. That you have a physical body, that you have experienced deaths in many lifetimes, that memory is stored somewhere in the subconscious. So some amount of fear will be there. But what Bhairava does is that he will teach you how to manage that fear. So you will fall down, you will get up, you will fall down, you will get up, you will fall down, you will get up. Like this you will keep carrying, until one day suddenly you realize that you have succeeded. This is very typical of what Bhairava does to the Upasaka. And this attitude is extremely potent, extremely important in going into the higher stage of Shakti Upasana. In one day, Shakti Upasana success or highest success is very tough, because her tests are brutal, to be honest. When she takes a person to the higher stages, she will test you to the last DNA before you actually go to the highest of the realms. And that is where the Tattva of Bhairava helps. In fact, some of the rare Devi Upasana, Devi Vigrahas, by the way, which is not ordinary worship. In Tantra, for example, there is a deity, there is a form of the mother, which is known as Kubjika, and she stands on Bhairava. There is a Navatman Bhairava on which she is standing. Her worship used to happen, at one point, her worship was there in Kamakhya also. Then the Paddhatis changed. So the deity in Kamakhya was also at one point identified with Kubjika. Kubjika is the hunchbacked goddess. She was considered as the queen of the Paschima Amnaya. Amnaya is one form of the tantric path. So the idea was, coming back to the point, if you do a Google, you will see that there is the Devi, and right below that there is Bhairava, and Bhairava is carrying her in her arms, which is basically an indication to the Upasaka that until you attain the Bhairavattva, you can't experience what this deity is. Bhairava is that integral. He is the one who has decided to come down into this plane. He is the divine in the physical plane, in this plane where everything is dark, everything is ignorant. Darkness is because of the ignorance. He is the one who can but he is divine. So he can change you. He can change you, and he can give you the capacity and the strength that is needed to go higher up. Whether one goes to Shiva as the final deity or whether one goes to Shakti as the final deity, that comes secondary. Whether the Ishvara Tattva takes precedence or the Ishvari Tattva takes precedence, and Upasaka will come a little later. But initially, the formative stages, the Adhara, that is where Bhairava does a fantastic, it is his blessing that he creates the Adhara in any Upasaka.
Because the first rule of dharma is satya. Where there is no satya, there is no dharma. Okay, dharma, spirituality, everything stands on the first foundation of absolute truth, because truth means reality.
So Satya is Dharma?
Dharma's first important foundation is satya. And satya is not just verbal satya. Satya means that which is. जो है वो सत्य है, ना उसके आगे कुछ ना पीछे कुछ, nothing to be added, nothing to be subtracted. That which is the reality. To be able to accept reality is the first step in Adhyatma. And this is where Brahma does a terrible crime. And because of this crime, Shiva's anger manifests in the form of Kala Bhairava. And he cuts off Brahma's head and he says that you cannot be, your worship is not going to happen anymore. There are some other versions of the story we find in the Puranas where Brahma is getting attached to one of his creations and his popping up a head to keep an eye on the creation, and then Shiva gets angry and removes. Bottom line of this story is that this is a very, very significant story. Two things we realize. Bhairava comes out in a state of Shiva manifests the form of Bhairava when there is a state of agitation. Okay, there's a state of agitation, a conflict, a stressful situation, something. In Bhairav sadhana, we use the number 8 very often. Okay, because Bhairav Ashtami is there. In Jyotisha, 8 is considered as the number of the house that is unknown. Till the 7th house, you can see the visible world.
Oh.
That which is within your vision. You can recognize
I thought
that.
8 is like that eternity.
Yes,
Oh.
it is eternity. And it is also that space which is your blind spot, that which you cannot see.
Okay.
So there's a chaos involved in it. In that chaos comes out Bhairava. Okay. And what he does is that which is attached to falsehood, that which is untrue, where there is some ego involved, some false ego, okay, where Brahma is thinking that I have done it, I am the greatest, etc. He cuts off Brahma's head. He removes that ego. He says that, and this ego, what we call ego, is actually also attached to, in some senses, our lives. For example, I'd like to bring in another story of the Puranas. We know that the manifestation of Rudra comes out with that specific story of the Daksha Yagya, where Daksha is performing a Yagya. And it is a Vedic Yagya where there is Vishnu, there's rishis like Vrigu and everything is being done, and yet Shiva is not invited. And then the Yagya is completely destroyed. The essence of this story has some link to this story also of the Kala Bhairava destroying Brahma's head. In both cases, what happens is Daksha, the word means adept, one who is very proficient in performing the ritual. Okay. So he is very sure that I have already fixed everything. Sab kuch aata hai mere ko. Kuch जानने का जरूरत नहीं है. I know the text, I know the scriptures, I have the rishis, I have A to Z. सब ज्ञान है मेरा. और कुछ बाकी नहीं है. Everything is set. It's all in my fingertips. I can manipulate it. What I will do, I'll get the results, etc. That is when nature puts in this number 8, that extra thing, that which you cannot see, your blind spot. Something that comes out of the blue and destroys everything. Because whatever you know, there is always going to be something that you don't know. There's always going to be something that is beyond your knowledge. So it's good to be humble. It's good to acknowledge that the divine is more competent than you are and you ever will be. The same story comes here. Brahma thought that he fixed everything. I am the creator of the Vedas. I have 4 heads. I know A to Z. I can teach you what the rituals are. So what does it matter if I say I am the best? I am almost the best in my view. And then suddenly comes Bhairava and says, no, there's somebody who destroys his head even with the small nail of his little finger. And that is a terrific manifestation that once that happens, that head gets cut off, then Brahma realizes that there is more to reality than what he assumed in his mental space. We all construct ideas in our head, who we are, what we are, okay, what is our reality, where we are going, what is it that defines us? And beyond that definition also there is a reality, and that is the beginning of true Adhyatma. And that is where Bhairava takes a person. By first giving you the slight amount of jolt. But it's not a bad jolt, because at the end of the day, you realize that somebody who's meant to reach to the higher stages have to transcend the material aspects of the universe. And that will only happen. The ego does not let go of the material. It lets go of the material only when it gets a shock. This is one of the oldest realities of life. Even in the Gita, we see the first chapter starts with Arjuna Vishad Yoga. Arjuna is confused in the middle of the battlefield. Till now, he is fixed. This is the battle, this is the war, this is the enemy, I have to do X, Y, Z, etc. Right in the middle, suddenly he's seeing that, okay, the people out there are my relatives.
Hmm.
What am I doing? Is it really worth it? You are
Yes.
completely confused. It is that state when your normal material rational mind has given up and can't find a solution. That is when there is an injection of power from outside. That is when one is able to go beyond.
Why is Kal Bhairav Baba's favorite city Kashi?
Because as I mentioned, Kashi, so whole of India, the physical geography of India is linked to certain spiritual experiences and states. Okay, so very interestingly, this whole landmass, the subcontinent, the area, all the places, prominent places, are also like a geographical imprint of certain spiritual states that Upasaka experiences. So it's very interesting, which means basically Kashi, for example, is a state where the Kundalini Shakti goes into a particular domain and one experiences a tremendous sense of light, Prakash. It's not light as in an external light, it's a sense of illumination, knowledge, wisdom. Automatically, you see things and you understand things. That state is called Kashi.
Okay.
And Bhairava is the one who, that state is beyond the ordinary human state. That is not a normal materialistic state. That's a very spiritual state. And he is, so to shift oneself from our ordinary consciousness into that consciousness where you can experience Kashi, a jump is required. Okay, a shift is required completely. A normal mindset cannot understand this. It's like, it's a state that is beyond our imagination also. And the borderline between that spiritual condition and the material state, that is where Bhairava stands. He is the portal between the absolutely transcendentally beautiful spiritual and the dark material. He stands right at the center of these two, and he knows whom to pull from this side to that side and what to do. So without his permission, you cannot go. He loves Kashi because he is from Kashi. And when I say Kashi, I don't mean the physical city of Kashi. So this is this
The
line.
spiritual Kashi.
Yes, it's easy to go to Kashi, physical Kashi, but the spiritual Kashi is very difficult.
So how is it different?
It is vastly different.
Where do we find the spiritual Kashi?
That's how you have to do the sadhanas. And if I believe that if somebody does the upasana correctly, sadhanas, and is meant to reach Kashi, they reach the internal Kashi. And once the internal Kashi is reached, then you will see that there's a strange similarity between that imprint of that internal Kashi is also there in the external Kashi. External Kashi, you go, it's very beautiful. There's no doubt about it. It's wonderful. The energy of Shiva is so palpable. It's good to do sadhana there. But at one point, eventually, you have to realize that these things have a corresponding resonance inside the human being also. And it is very beautiful to reach there. Very beautiful. That, the doorway to that state is controlled by Bhairava. And that is why we have this thing in the Kashi. There's called the Bhairava Danda. He has the Danda and he's the Dandapani, one who holds the Danda. The
Some
rod of
people
justice.
say that he's the cousin of Kal Bhairava.
So either way, it's the Tattva is Bhairava, fundamentally.
And so the Panditjis,
Yeah.
do the thak on the back that dand mil gaya.
Basically, it's a representation of the fact that, so when to enter into that state of Kashi, you have to be very spiritual. Spirituality तो ऐसे आता नहीं है लोगों में until nature gives some person. So the whole history of humanity and great spiritual upasakas, you'll see, starts off somewhere with some degree of pain. If everything was very good, you'll never enter into spiritual. Nobody does. It's human nature. We take things for granted. That pain, what Bhairava does is that he accumulates the karma. Suppose somebody is supposed to experience a karma for 10, 15, 20 lifetimes. He can concentrate all of that in a blink of an eye. It's very painful. It's more painful than the pain that Yama can give you. Yama is the lord of death. But once you pass through it, you are cleansed, Shuddha, Pavitra, and then you can enter Kashi.
Sir, if I may ask, what pains did you have that you...
Everybody has. It's not something that anybody has more or less. See, the moment you're born, take it for granted that someday or the other you'll face disappointments, disease, various things. It's all right. The whole beauty of Bhairav Upasana. See, there are many protective deities. There are many protective deities in Dharma. Narasimha is a protective deity. Hanumanji is a protective deity. The difference with Bhairava is that he protects not by removing the problems. He protects by making you immune to them.
Okay. Facing
them. be very steady in reality. Once you become steady with reality, truth, steady with truth, then it gives you a peculiar power to be able to digest anything, to remain unshaken.
This is true, sir.
That is the beauty of
The
Bhairav.
power goes up, takes
Yes.
time, it's a lot of hard work,
Yeah.
lot of tears, but nothing comes easy. There's no free lunch.
एक तो कुछ कुछ वेद जो है वो तंत्र को नास्तिकवाद मानता था, क्योंकि वेद को नहीं जो सम्मान कर रहा है वो नास्तिक बन गया। तंत्र में उसका जवाब के स्वरूप में लिख रहा है कि वैदिक कर्मकांड जो है वो है जैसे सांप जिसका विष नहीं है, मतलब वो कर रहा है, पद्धति हो रहा है, लेकिन उसका रिजल्ट क्या आ रहा है। तो ये सब भी हो चुका है। तो यहाँ पे वैदिक क्रम में और स्पेशली ये जो वामाचार है, इसमें माना जाता है कि जब वामाचार में एक तरह का पूजा होता है जो जिसको कहते हैं चक्र पूजा, सब मिलके एक साथ बैठ के पूजा किया जाता है भगवती को। तो चक्र में जो बैठता है वो सब ब्राह्मण है, चाहे उसका जो भी वर्ण हो पहले से, चक्र में जो बैठा है सब एक है।
भैरव उपासना क्या होती?
भैरव उपासना तो भैरव बाबा का जो उपासना है, पद्धति है।
भैरव कितने प्रकार के होते?
भैरव
कितने प्रकार के होते?
रुद्र अमल के अनुसार भैरव 64 तरीके का 64 रूप है बाबा का, भैरव बाबा का 64 फॉर्म्स ऑफ भैरव। उसमें से सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट है 8 अष्ट भैरव।
तो शिव और भैरव में क्या अंतर?
हाँ, तो शिव और भैरव में ये डिफरेंस है कि शिव का जब पूजा होता है हमारा तो सोमस्कंद स्वरूप में भगवान का पूजा होता है। या तो शिव है, साथ में पार्वती है, कार्तिकेय, गणेश है। तो क्या हुआ, पूरा परिवार बन गया। तो बेसिकली क्या हुआ है कि वो देवता में जो पुरुष तत्व उसको अलग किया गया, शक्ति तत्व अलग किया गया। और ये जो कार्तिक और गणेश है ये सिद्धि है, पुरुष शक्ति का जो मिलन होता है उसमें सिद्धि प्राप्त होता है, वो सिद्धि है। भैरव ऐसा है कि वो भी शंकर भगवान ही है, कोई अंतर नहीं है। और ये पूरा जो परिवार है, दिव्य जो परिवार है, इसको माना जाता है, हम लोग कॉलोकियली हम लोग बोलते हैं कि वो कैलाश में बैठे हो। कैलाश में तो बहुत ऊपर कहीं अवस्था में बैठे हुए हैं जहाँ पे सब शुद्धता है। यहाँ पे हम लोग जो जगत में जीते हैं, जहाँ पे हम लोग हैं, यहाँ पे सब कुछ डेंस, डार्क, इग्नोरेंट, ये 3 शब्द का
डेंस, डार्क और
इग्नोरेंट, ठीक है, क्योंकि यहाँ लाइट नहीं है। ऑटोमेटिकली स्पॉन्टेनियसली हमें समझ में नहीं आते ये सब चीज़ की यहाँ पे कोई डिविनिटी है, कोई देवता है, कौन देखा है। ये तो हम लोग ट्रेडिशन में बोले जा रहा है, गुरु जो है, गुरुजन जो है वो बोलते हैं तो हम मानते हैं इसलिए। लेकिन इसीलिए ये डार्कनेस है, इसीलिए साधना करना पड़ता है। तो वही शंकर भगवान जब नीचे आ जाता है, इस स्तर में आ जाता है, हमारे रिल्म में आ जाता है कहीं ना कहीं, वो होता है तब उनका भैरव स्वरूप आता है। भैरव स्वरूप क्योंकि बाहर से भैरव शब्द भयंकर एक रूप है बाबा का। भयंकर इसलिए लगता है क्योंकि ये पूरा जगह ही इतना डार्क है, इतना नेगेटिव है। तो उसको उस नेगेटिव, उस अंधकार के बीच में अगर प्रकाश को डालना है तो आप में भी उस तीव्रता और शक्ति होना चाहिए, उस भयंकर स्वरूप होना चाहिए। एक ये वर्णन है। दूसरा है कि भैरव जो है दिगंबर है, सब आइडेंटिटी छोड़ दिया है उसमें, और शक्ति उसके अंदर ही है। अच्छा, जैसे शिव में मैं बताया कि शिव पार्वती पूरा परिवार है, इसमें भैरव स्वरूप, भैरव के अंदर ही शक्ति है। और सब आइडेंटिटी जब छोड़ देते हैं तो दिगंबर स्वरूप में एकदम आ जाता है, स्मशान में आ जाता है। स्मशान मतलब जब एवरीथिंग इज ओवर, स्मशान यहाँ पे है। जब शक्ति यहाँ तक पहुँच जाता है किसी व्यक्ति का तो माना जाता है कि वो स्मशान पहुँच गया, क्योंकि उसका दुनिया से कोई लगाव है ही नहीं, सब छोड़ दिया है। उस समय पे शिव आता है, उस समय पे वो उस अवस्था में बैठे रहते हैं। तो जो साधारण व्यक्ति है, जैसे हमारे तरफ हम लोग जैसे सोसाइटी में हम लोग रहते हैं, सोसाइटी में रहना मतलब क्या, डुअलिटी में होगा, ये चीज़ अच्छा है, ये बुरा है, ये है। तो उसको, उन लोगों को वो स्वरूप देखने से कहीं डर लगता है कि उसमें सब छोड़ दिया है। तो इसीलिए भैरव को थोड़ा सा लगता है कि भयंकर है। लेकिन शास्त्र ये बोल रहा है कि भयंकर इसलिए है कि वो जिस लाइक जैसे वो इंग्लिश में कहते हैं नेकेड ट्रूथ, कोई फिल्टर नहीं है, उस स्वरूप में है। एक यहाँ दूसरा चीज़ है कि भैरव क्षेत्रपाल भी है। अच्छा, शैव सिद्धांत में, तंत्र में उनको क्षेत्रपाल का स्वरूप भी दिया जाता है। वो जगह को रक्षा करने का जो प्रोटेक्शन का जो काम है या जो जिम्मेदारी है, जो उसका जो ये है रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है, तो वो कहीं भैरव के ऊपर दिया जाता है। तो वो शिव का ही स्वरूप है। वो शिव पुराण में जहाँ पे काल भैरव का उत्पत्ति होता है बाबा का, तो वो लिख ही रहा है वहाँ पे, एक श्लोक में बोल ही रहा है कि ये शंकर और काल भैरव पे कोई अंतर नहीं है, ये बस भ्रम है, माया है, जो लगता है कि दोनों अलग है। गण भी नहीं है, बाकी तो गण है, शिव के तो बहुत सारे गण है, वो बोले गण भी नहीं, ये शिव खुद ही है, खुद ही आया है इस स्वरूप में, ताकि जो इसके अंदर जो साधना का पद्धति है या जो एक प्रोटेक्शन है या जो भी है, प्रोटेक्शन किस चीज़ से प्रोटेक्शन? अंधकार से प्रोटेक्शन। अंधकार मतलब मानसिक अंधकार हो, स्पिरिचुअल डार्कनेस, उस चीज़ को हटाना, उसको कैसे साफ किया जाए, उसमें लाइट कैसे लाया जाए, इसलिए वो भयंकर रूप में आते हैं। लेकिन भैरव साधना तो कश्मीर में एक समय पे एकदम तीव्रता में था, और तंत्र में भी बहुत मान्यता है। ये तंत्र के गुरु भी भैरव है। ये कोलमार का भी बता रहा था मैं, वामाचार्य जो है उनके, ये इनके दिव्य गुरु, जहाँ से ये सिस्टम आया है, तो आनंद भैरव से आया है। तो जो भैरव आनंद स्वरूप में है, उस आनंद में इट इज़ लाइक एक स्वतःस्फूर्त अवस्था में वो ज्ञान आता है, पूरा दुनिया में जाता है। तो इसीलिए वो तंत्र के गुरु भी है, उन्हीं को पता है। और पूरा तंत्र में यही होता है कि भैरव और भैरवी बैठा हुआ है। शिव पार्वती का ही एक स्वरूप है जो यहाँ पे है इस अवस्था में। कैलाश में नहीं बैठे, वो यहाँ पे आ गए हैं। वहाँ पे
काशी में बैठे हुए।
काशी में है, सब जगह पे है।
काशी में है ना काल भैरव,
जी जी, काशी में है।
कि आपको जो है वो भगवान विश्वनाथ के दर्शन करने से पहले आपको काल भैरव के दर्शन करने पड़ते हैं। काल भैरव के दर्शन नहीं किए तो आपको फल नहीं मिलेगा।
हाँ, तो एक तरह से वो प्रिपेयर करते हैं कि काशी जो आध्यात्मिक काशी है, सिर्फ नगरी का बात नहीं कर रहा हूँ, एक काशी की ट्रेन पकड़ के, फ्लाइट पकड़ के चले गए, एक काशी जहाँ पे एक एकदम से इल्यूमिन्ड अवस्था, मतलब वो वर्णन के अतीत है एक अवस्था है। लेकिन वहाँ जाने के लिए जो शुद्धता है, कौन जा पाएगा नहीं पाएगा, ये ही काल भैरव करता है। वो वही बाबा का कृपा है कि उनको पता है कि कौन जा सकता है, कौन किस में शुद्धता है। और इसीलिए उनको एक ये भी माना जाता है, काशी में जिसका मृत्यु होता है वो भैरव यातना से कभी पास करना पड़ता है। यानी आपको मान लीजिए कि इतना कर्म है, किसी का भी, आपका बात मतलब ऐसे जनरल में बता रहा हूँ कि, और मान लीजिए 50 जन्म इसको बर्थ लेना पड़ेगा, तो बाबा कृपा करके वो चीज़, हाँ दंड तो भोगना पड़ेगा, जो कर्म है वो कहीं गायब नहीं होगा, लेकिन उसको शॉर्टन कर सकता है। 50 जन्म के वजह मे बी इन द ब्लिंक ऑफ एन आई आपको वही चीज़ भोगना पड़ेगा, उसके बाद आपको मुक्ति। तो ये क्षमता भी भैरव में है।
of Bhairava itself covers aspects of protection, security, etc. Is practicing the Kavacham of Bhairava valid for all Upasana, all deities?
Bhairava Kavach can be done by anybody who is doing any Bhairava Japa. Anybody who is doing Om Bhairava Japa can easily do Bhairava Kavach, no problem with that, even if Ishta Devata is somebody else. So Kavacham, so when you do a deity upasana, there are 5 things that comes into play eventually. First is the mantra of the devata. Second is the stuti of the devata. Third is the kavacham of the devata. Fourth is the shastranamam of the devata. And the last is the hridayam of the devata. Hridayam is not to be touched. But among these 4, eventually, it's not on day 1. So few years of mantra you do, then you start with the stuti along with the mantra. Along with the stuti and the mantra, you do kavacham. Along with the stuti, mantra, kavacham, you do the shastranamam. This makes a complete package. Each one has its own role. Kavacham is directly aimed at protecting the individual, whereas the mantra is aimed at your spiritual growth. So as and when required, Bhairava will bring about your spiritual growth. It may or may not always be constantly protective of the individual in the sense that you think. You may want, I want XYZ protection. Bhairava may think that no, I need to take this individual to a higher realm. So let him or her pass through a little bit of difficult time, and after that he will be in a much more spiritual state. That is Bhairava's thinking, that is the deity's thinking. That is how the mantra works. Unless the mantra specifically has protective elements inside. For example, the Vatuka Mula mantra has the phrase Apadudharaka that automatically encodes a kind of protection from difficult situations. So additionally, doing a kavach is very good for the deity. There is no doubt about it. And Bhairava kavach works with all Devi sadhanas, or any deity in the Shaiva realm, Shiva Shakti realm. If you're worshipping, you can do Bhairava kavach. It's very good to do. And I've seen literally miraculous things that have happened for people who have done significant amount of Bhairav kavach, especially if there are very difficult times suddenly coming up. I know cases like this where people had to, some kind of a problem related to spirits and all that had happened, and various things were tried, nothing was working. In desperation, the individual started doing Bhairava Kavacham almost 54 or 60 times every day. And within a span of 14-15 days, there was absolute miraculous transformation in the situation. And after that, thank God, never any negative was faced by the individual or the victim who was facing that problem. Bhairava Kavacham is like nuclear if you do it properly.